if I understand correctly then, so the point about Band C is that that's the minimum level we have to meet. Ideally better than that, but...
The regulations, the MEES, I think they're called, minimum energy efficiency, something or other, yes, and that's based on a SAP range, and C is, I can't remember the numbers off the top of my head. There is, SAP ratings are changing, which makes it a bit confusing sometimes, but yeah, it's and you've got RD SAP, which is different to SAP, but you know, the idea being EPC is the standard we're using, which is fairly, not simplistic, but if you have an in-depth survey, you can get into much more detail. So the EPC is what you get when you get a new home or you sell your home, etc. We have to keep an EPC of our homes, and that's the rating we're using. To go, the costs to retrofit a lot of our homes to A, the increased cost would be so significant that we'd probably have to reduce our programme, quite considerably. So we've decided that we'll go for C, and any new homes we get, they are building regs mean they will be B or A anyway. And modular stuff that we're going for is all A. Yep.
Thank you. So in terms of the numbers then, sorry that some of this might not be sensible questioning, but if I understand for the Excel sheet and the Microsoft project timeline, we're talking about 1,000 homes over the next 3 years out of our, 10,000 in total, thereabouts. Could you just give us some background on how that's flowing through? Thank you.
Yeah, so it's about 1,000 we've got in. We'll try and increase that with the extra funding, but there are funding caps on each measure per property, etc. So that's why we go for the easiest and the biggest impacts first. As I said, as part of this will be, for example, we've got over 200 E and F. They would be the first on our list to dispose of, for example, because it costs them so much more to try and get those to a C or a B. And part of some of those Ds, naturally, when we're doing estate regeneration, block refurbs, they'll probably come up to a C or a B anyway. So you'll probably point out that if we only do 1,000 in 3 years, that will take us to 2029, and we'll still be a long way short. So it's a dovetail approach of getting rid of stock and improving other stock through development, refurb, regeneration, and disposing.
But so if I understand correctly, the 1,000 is budget constrained, basically.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay, and I think, let me just check. Actually, in terms of terminology, PVHHRESH. Sorry, perhaps I should be, but I'm not familiar with those terms. Could you just clarify them?
Yeah, so PV is photovoltaic, which is solar. HHRESH is yeah. I don't think it's the hazard one. I think it's I'll come back to you on that one. It's something to do with
Okay, and why are you doing that? Last question. Is it correct to say that the status, the SAP status, is broadly consistent across all the towns in the borough? Because that's what I'm reading from the heat map, that we're essentially in the same situation in Billericay, in Wickford, and in Basildon, etc.
Broadly, yes, because they're very similar archetypes. It's just so much more of them in Basildon, because obviously that's where the most of the housing we own is.
Sorry, Deborah, yeah.
Yes, would you like me to update you on the new decent home standard?
Yes, please.
So just to give you a very basic summary, as government will be issuing further detailed clarification later on in the year, but there are four criteria. The first one being that the home must be free of the most dangerous hazards, and these hazards we call Cat 1 hazards, so damp and mould, significant damp and mould, to give you an example, would be one. Criterion B, the home must be in a reasonable state of repair. So the homes will fail against this if one or more key building components is not in a reasonable state of repair, or two or more other building components are not in a reasonable state of repair. So, as I said, further detail will be brought forward later in the year on this. A home must provide core facilities and services. So to meet this, flats must provide at least 3 of the following: a kitchen with adequate space and layout, an appropriately located bathroom and WC, adequate external noise insulation, an adequate size and layout of common entrance areas for blocks of flats. And houses must provide at least 2 of the following facilities: a kitchen with adequate space and layout, an appropriately located bathroom and WC, and an adequate external noise insulation. Homes must also be equipped with child-resistant window restrictors, which can be overridden by an adult, and all windows which present a fall risk for children, and members may be aware that there have been some tragic circumstances where young children have fallen out of windows nationally. So the next criteria is the home must provide thermal comfort, and to meet this, homes must provide a reasonable degree of thermal comfort, and this includes ensuring homes meet the minimum energy efficiency standards, which is the standard my colleague just referred to. And criteria E, the home should be free of damp and mould. So that's the new criteria in terms of the Decent Home Standard. As I said earlier, this committee may wish to receive a report, a more detailed report, to scrutinise the criteria in relation to our property and its levels.
Thank you very much for that update. Any comments or questions for the officer from members on that additional information? No? Okay. So I think that is us done for item 4. So item 5 on the agenda is the briefing paper for the housing revenue account rent increase options. This is page 15 to 69 of the agenda. Just before we get on to that, I'll just read the matters for consideration. So these are, well, the recommendation is that the committee notes the content of this briefing note and the possible options for rent setting from 2027-28 onwards, the government's policy statement on rents for social housing, and the government, and the housing regulators' rent standards. So I think, Jerry, you're presenting this item, is that right? Pass you over.
As the Chair has just said, the purpose is just to note the content of the briefing note, the policy statement and the housing regulators' rent standard. Basildon, like all registered providers, need to comply with the requirements, expectations and associated content from April 26 of those documents. However, because of they've only recently been actually published, effectively these will apply from April 27. We've complied with the base requirement for the proposed rent increase for 26-27, which has been set at 4.8%, being CPI at September of 3.8 plus 1%. And the requirements effectively apply to the HRA's general and sheltered housing stock. There are certain exceptions listed in the report, the definitions of which are in the policy statement. Each property within our stock has a formula rent. This is a specifically calculated figure as set out in the government's policy statement. Properties also have rent caps as set out in the report, which cannot be exceeded, but to be fair, the rents are nowhere near those rent caps at the moment. So there's a lot of, and the rent caps go up by CPI plus 1.5%, so you're always behind them, to be fair. Flexibility currently exists where councils can set rents above formula rent by 5% or 10% for supported housing, but to do that there needs to be a clear rationale for doing it and must take into account local circumstances and affordability. Currently, Basildon don't make use of that flexibility. Currently, the policy is that the formula rent is only applied to properties when they become void and are allocated to new tenants. So there is a mismatch at times between some properties are at formula rent, others are below formula rent. The government's overall aim is to have all properties at formula rent. Therefore, they have introduced what they've termed rent convergence from April 27 to speed up the movements to formula rent. This allows an additional £1 to be applied from April 27 and £2 from April 28. The current position with our housing stock is there are currently, of the just over 10,000, because a certain number of our properties are being used for temporary accommodation, but the properties that are not being used for TA, there's just over 7,500 are actually below formula rent, and of those, 98% or 7,358 are more than £3 below formula rent. If all, just as a point, if all properties were at formula rent, it would generate an additional 1.7 million in rental income to the HRA. We only have 969 properties at the moment at formula rent, and that's because of the turnover of void properties each year. So effectively, what we're saying is the next steps need to review and refresh current rent policy and consider rent levels from 27-28 onwards, which obviously will be done during budget setting for 27-28 later this year.
Thank you. Any questions from the members on that presentation? Councillor Headley.
Thanks for that explanation around formula rent. So you're saying that 1.746 million could be generated if all the properties were at formula rent. So is there any ambition to get to that figure?
They're expecting the policy rent statement to last for the next 10 years. There's 10 years in which to move towards that formula rent position.
Thank you. Sorry, do you have something to add to that before Councillor Headley comes back in, Deborah?
Thank you. I'd just like to also give you some further information on the history around rent convergence. So rent convergence historically was something that was in place, and then for a number of reasons it stopped. Government has been aware, certainly over the last few years, that councils in particular are really struggling with their planned programmes and their repairs and maintenance programmes. Thus, they have brought rent convergence back to allow councils to increase their rents, to enable us to make sure we can provide safe, dry, warm homes that are in good condition for our tenants.
Councillor Headley, you've got a follow-up question.
I think on the previous item, the officer said that the council had achieved a £9 million investment for warmer homes, if that's right. We know that the HRA is ring-fenced, so if we were able to, over a period of 18 months, 2 years, bring up the formula rent, I assume that would give us nearly 1.75 million additional money to spend on warmer homes. because it would be then available to augment the 9 million that you've already spoken about. So it could accelerate the programme of that refurbishment.
I mean, obviously, but that would involve some large individual increases to tenants' rents in any one period, which may or may not be acceptable or feasible, given moving towards formula rent, one would have to take into account affordability, and if rents are increased to such a level, you're going to have to look at things like arrears, etc. So,
as I understand it, a large proportion of our tenants are on some form of rent rebate, or they don't actually pay all the rent themselves. So a lot of that funding would come through increase in their rebate.
Thank you. So it would take a period of time, quite a long period of time, to reach rent convergence formula rent for all our properties, because of the sheer percentage of properties that are under rent convergence. And of course we have a limit under the rent policy in terms of what we can increase rents by each year. But yes, you are correct that this would be covered by universal credit or housing benefit, whichever benefit, if those tenants are on benefits. And sorry, also yes, you are correct that any additional revenue that was that we brought in through increasing our rents would go back to improving our housing stock for our residents.
Okay, so what I think I said 18 months, 2 years. I mean, I think there should be some ambition and a programme around a set time, whether it's 3, 4, 5 years. But you're never going to get there if you don't have some roadmap to get there.
I mean, we're governed in terms of how fast we can move rent convergence, and I apologise, I'm new to the authority, so haven't yet looked at the business plan, but in my previous authority we had done the calculations, and it was going to take us 10 years to get all our properties on the correct rent. So it does take quite a long time, because of the small increases we can make every year. We are, as I said, governed by the amount we can increase rents, and quite rightly so, because we wouldn't want to put undue pressure on our tenants in terms of vastly increasing those rents. So I would expect that here at Basildon, when we put the rent convergence and modelled that through the business plan, that it will take us about 10 years to reach formula rent for all our properties.
I think what we need to do is see that plan and crunch the numbers so that we do know what is a reasonable timescale to get that convergence, because you've already said universal credit is paying a lot of the rent anyway, so I think there is that buffer against people falling into arrears. And you can always make special circumstances for individuals that have financial shortfall. I mean, it can. If you don't do something, you're never going to converge.
I think, as I said, there's sort of well over 7,000 properties that are more than £3 below formula rent. So even if you applied the £1, the CPI plus 1% next year, plus £1, plus £2 the year after, you've still got those 7,000 properties are still going to be below formula rent. We know, we've got the numbers, we know how many are below and the amount they're below formula rent. We have those, because that's where my figures have come from. So we have got the figures, we can look at them and model them, but it would take, as the Executive Director said, it would take a certain amount of time to get to that level.
Do you want to come back on that, Deborah?
Thank you. Just one final point. Just also to highlight that what happens is every year the formula rent increases. So that will increase every year. So as my colleague is saying, that's why it takes such a long time to reach formula rent, because you've only got that £1 on top of whatever the government, say we can do in terms of CPI. So we are restricted, and as I said, rightly so.
Councillor Headley, any follow-up?
I've lost the will to live, to be honest. I think you do need some form of plan. I'm assuming that a new tenant goes straight onto formula rent.
Correct.
So I think there's a dichotomy there between someone that's an existing tenant and a new tenant in the same property could be paying different rent. So I think the sooner you can come to some way of getting, if the government want formula rent, then whether it takes 10 years, 12 years, 15 years, you need to be planning to get there.
So can I just confirm that I actually understand what we're saying here? So obviously we've got a significant number of properties that are below formula rent. There's a standard formula from the government, CPI +1, that we're using to converge there. And obviously it's going to take time to get there. Yeah, is that right? Sorry, Jonathan, I'm not sure if you were shaking your head or is this something. Okay, I'm sorry, I haven't finished yet. But my understanding is from the document, perhaps I'm misreading it, that there is additional flexibility that local authorities have to increase rents beyond the standard national process, if I may call it that. So are we understanding correctly then that it's an administration policy decision to not go beyond the national picture? Can you just confirm that?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, so, well, okay, so again, just making sure I understand it. So we could be converging more rapidly, as Councillor Headley's stated, but that's not the policy of the current administration to do so.
The CPI +1% is the base. Local authorities have the option to increase above the base or below the base. It's up to the local authorities themselves and what their rent policy is. So the base is the CPI +1%.
Okay, and if I'm understanding correctly, the risk of converging more rapidly is that our tenants are hit with much more significant rent increases over over a shorter period of time. So at the moment, the rents are already going up by 4.8%. And if the administration took the decision to make the transition and the convergence more rapid, they would be experiencing a rent increase beyond that. So I know that sounds like a basic question. Just want to make sure I've understood what you're saying.
That's correct. That's correct. From 2027, and what we would do for members to help members make that decision is bring a report which also detailed the capital investment we need to bring the properties up to safe, dry, warm homes, along with the benefits of convergence to help members with that decision.
Okay, so is there, as Councillor Headley suggested, something that we could review at a subsequent meeting that would allow us to pass feedback on to Cabinet?
I'm assuming that we're going to be bringing a report to Cabinet about rent convergence and whether Cabinet want to move forward with it. Is that?
It depends how soon the members want that report. At the moment, it would be built into the budget report for 27-28. So it would be at that point the whole thing would need to be considered and the business plan looked at as to what members wanted to do with regard to the rent increases for 27-28.
Yeah, well, I think there would certainly be some value in us looking at that and providing feedback at the appropriate time point. So perhaps we review that when we look at the work plan, Suzanne, at the end of the meeting in terms of when a good time for that would be, unless there's a comment you'd like to make on that now in terms of timing.
the work plan's a good time. Obviously, we need to bear in mind that we need to do a full consultation with our residents on this, and I think we should be doing that before we bring our report to Scrutiny, so we can inform Scrutiny what the tenant feedback was on the options and proposals.
Yeah, I mean, that sounds very sensible to me. Obviously, 4.8% increase is quite a chunky increase as it stands, and we certainly need to understand tenants' views on the matter before we progress any further. But I think it would be valuable for us to look at the numbers, certainly, and take a view. Okay, Councillor Webb, I think you had a question, didn't you?
I think our questions have actually already been answered by officers, actually, yeah. I think really, to understand it a bit more clearly, of course, surmising the rent standard also, that rents do not go down, they always go forward. So if you're considering larger increases on a tenant, it not only disadvantages many families straight away, but it also disadvantages them going forward as well, year by year, through even more increase. So I think really this rent standard and the 10-year plan towards the formula rent is there for a purpose, and I think that's. Deborah, you've already kind of outlined that succinctly, and I think that's where we are. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Webb. And just to pass on the good news, but apparently we are now live streaming. So I don't know how long we've been live streaming, but we are now live streaming. Hope that's good news for all of us. Okay, any further questions on item 5 of the agenda, briefing paper housing revenue account rent increases? No? Okay, so item number 6 is an update on the 4 Street Note Bridge change of use from sheltered to general housing. I think there was a separate PowerPoint on this. It's not in the main agenda. And Cathy, you're going to take us through that. So I'll hand over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I've been asked to, as you know, from 25th of June last year, the Planning Committee, 4 Street was agreed for it to change from the use of shelter to general needs. And I've been asked to come back to provide an overview of how the decant is going of the residents. So just I've just put a few just to sort of like update everyone on there. 4 Street is currently as a sheltered housing scheme for over 55s, and there's 27 flats. As I said, the approval was granted at the Planning Committee, and after that decision, all tenants were written to advising of the committee decision and what the next steps would be, including what their options are. They all received contact individually from the allocations team and the sheltered housing officers to answer any questions or concerns that they may have had. And once we had spoken to them and they was fully understanding what was going on, the decant process started on Monday the 18th of August. So it was just slightly a couple of months after the decision was made, but we felt it was really important that the tenants actually understood what was happening before we started that 12-month decant. And so the decant will end on Friday the 15th of August. The support remains available for those that are still undecided and waiting to move. Next slide. So just a reminder, I thought it would be, just give you a reminder of what the options they were that the tenants were given. So option 1 was they could remain at 4 Street as a general needs tenant, so in their current home. That would mean they no longer have use of the communal facilities at Kenilworth Sheltered Housing Scheme, which is nearby across the road, and they wouldn't have a support from a sheltered housing officer. They would have a reduction in their service charges because they're no longer using the amenities of the sheltered housing scheme, like the communal hall, so they won't get charged for that. And if they chose to stay general needs, should they want to move to sheltered housing at a later date, then they can do that, but they would be under a transfer through the Home Seeker Register. And also, if they chose to change to general needs, they had the choice whether they wanted to change straight away, so they get the reduction in their service charge, or whether they want to wait till the end of the decant period. And option 2, they was given they could move to alternative sheltered housing scheme if they didn't want to go to general needs and wanted to stay sheltered. To assist them with that, the council would assist with their removals, carpet, and the new property would be decorated, so it'd be nice and fresh and clean for them. They've got 12 months to bid for an alternative property that comes available in that decant period time, and they are receiving helping with bidding, the bidding process if they require it from the allocations team. The tenancy will convert to general needs if they haven't bid or found a property at the end of that decant period. But obviously, you know, if they still want to go for sheltered, they can still go on the home seeker register, but it wouldn't be under this decant scheme. The sheltered housing officer remains available to support them throughout this period if they're still undecided, and the allocation team are also keeping in contact with them. So the next slide, get to go down. So how are things going, which is what I'm here to update you all. So 25 decided to remain, and they've changed to general needs. So 24 have changed to general needs. One of them is due to sign very shortly. And they didn't want to wait until the end of the decant period. They'd made their decision. They wanted to stay in their current property as general needs, and they therefore wanted to change to the tenancy, so they stopped paying the sheltered housing scheme charge. So that just leaves 2 of those 27 tenants, and currently their decision is they'd like to move. There's specific schemes that they're quite interested in, but they're receiving support from the allocations team and the sheltered housing officers, and they are receiving all the support as a sheltered tenant, because that's what they still currently are. And obviously the decants will go on up till August, and any future voids, as said last time, will be let as general needs housing. But currently there's been no voids because 25 have chose to stay and 2 will be moving. And that's it. Any questions? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kathy. Really appreciate you bringing that. Obviously, I was on planning when that decision was made, and I very much wanted to see how it rolled out. So it's really, really good to have that information. Any questions from the members on that one? No. I mean, just one from me, really, which was, you know, this looks like 25 people have moved over from sheltered to general, you know, reasonably comfortably. Is that correct? Were they unequivocal in the decision? Was there anything we can learn from in terms of conversations that were had?
I think, to be fair, before we started the decanting, in that 2 months after the decision was made, we ensured that they had all the information to hand. So, you know, they already knew about it because obviously consultation was done beforehand. And so when we started the decant, they'd already made those decisions. So I think how we've dealt with it has been quite well, because we've made sure they've been fully informed. And obviously, should we choose to, you know, looking at other schemes as in the future, then I think what we've learnt from it, and it's worked out quite well, is just make sure they're, you know, they fully understand what's going on. So I think for the 25 that decided to stay, it was an easy decision for them because they'd already knew and made that decision beforehand, and then just wanted to move straight over to general needs rather than wait out the 12 months. And that's the option we gave them.
So no grudging transition then from Sorry? Any of the no grudging transition from any of the 25. You know, that I'd rather stay sheltered, but it's my home, so I'm staying put where I am, kind of thing.
No, because they've still, if they were still undecided and they wanted to see what came available, because obviously, especially schemes nearby, they had the full 12 months to wait for that, and they've still only February and they've got till August, but they made that decision straight away. So, thank you.
So the fact they basically made the decision pretty early on, they've gone for it, they're not sticking out with sheltered for the rest of the period, suggests they're reasonably comfortable with it. Yeah, thank you. Okay, no further questions on that one then. Thank you, Kathy. So next item is item number 7, draft antisocial behaviour policy 2026. This is on pages 71 to 105 of the main agenda. I believe I'll just read the matters for consideration, which are that the Housing Scrutiny Committee to consider and provide feedback on the proposed draft antisocial behaviour policy prior to commencement of the public consultation. And I believe, Cheryl, you're presenting this one. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, I'd just like to introduce the updated antisocial behaviour policy. As members will be aware, antisocial behaviour continues to have a significant and sometimes devastating impact on individuals, families and entire neighbourhoods across our borough. This updated policy sets out a clear, consistent and victim-focused approach to how Basildon Council will prevent, respond to and reduce antisocial behaviour over the next 3 years. Antisocial behaviour is not just an inconvenience, its effects can be long-lasting. It undermines residents' sense of safety, erodes trust within neighbourhoods and can destabilise communities if it's not tackled promptly and effectively. This updated policy reflects several key priorities. First, a victim-centred approach. We recognise that every report we receive is a real person experiencing distress or fear, and we ensure victims receive timely support, ongoing communication and clarity about the next step in their case. Second, a strong emphasis on early intervention and prevention. Many ASB cases can be successfully resolved at an early stage through practical problem solving, supportive actions or mediation, and by working closely with residents to prevent escalation. Third, when necessary, the Council will take robust and proportionate enforcement action. The policy sets out the range of statutory tools available to us, from warnings through to civil injunctions, community protection notices, closure powers, and in the most serious cases, possession action. Enforcement is always used proportionately and only when other interventions have been ineffective or are inappropriate. A key strength of this policy is its focus on partnership working. The Antisocial Behaviour Team operates as part of the Safer Basildon Hub, working daily alongside Essex Police and other agencies. This collaborative approach ensures we address complex cases holistically, share essential intelligence and put support in place for both victims and vulnerable individuals who may be causing antisocial behaviour. The policy also sets out what behaviours constitute antisocial behaviour and what does not, responsibilities of residents, tenants and leaseholders, how incidents can be reported, how cases will be triaged, managed and reviewed, our safeguarding duties and commitment to equality considerations before any enforcement action is taken. In summary, this policy provides a clear and community-focused framework for how Basildon Council will continue to address antisocial behaviour. It strengthens our commitment to supporting victims, tackling perpetrators and working collaboratively to keep our communities safe. I welcome any questions.
Thank you very much. Cheryl, so any questions from the members on that policy? No? Councillor Webb, yeah.
Oh, just a bit of clarification, really, please. The page 8547 on the actions taken, it's got their good neighbour agreement. Can you explain really how that kind of works in practice? I mean, my understanding of neighbourhood is really around neighbourhood agreements, but that's around community cohesion. So I know this is something totally different. Maybe that could do with a little bit more explanation within the actual document.
Yes, thank you. Yes, so a good neighbourhood agreement is similar to a mediation agreement. So there will be agreed points that all neighbours that are involved in the agreement agree to in relation to how they will move forward. So it can be something really simple, or it can just be how they communicate with each other. But I can certainly expand on that in the policy if you think that's necessary.
Yeah, I think that would be helpful. I think really for the better understanding generally. I think the other thing is around the consultation. I mean, overall, I think it's kind of a great opportunity to reassure and educate, really, taking it out into the wider community, and also educating around the steps taken by the council in addressing all forms of ASB and hate crime. I think that would be an ample opportunity, really, whether it's kind of, I know it can be staff intensive, really, to do that. But I think as it's such a crucial opportunity to take that out, and of course I think it would reap dividends later on as well, going down the line. More people know about it and what steps are being taken. It may help to address any problems that might, prevent them from starting in the first place.
Sorry, did you want me? Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things that we are looking at is we've already had a session with our involved residents in relation to the policy and had feedback from them, and we're delivering a training session to them next week in relation to what the antisocial behaviour team does. And so now we're looking at putting together something that can go on the website to explain what the ASB, how our team work, what the process is.
Thanks, Cheryl. I mean, from my side, I'm impressed with the policies, to be honest with you. I'm reassured, glad we've got them, because obviously it's vital as a council that we do everything that we can to protect our tenants and our residents from antisocial behaviour. So just a couple of questions from me. Number one, on the consultation, what's our confidence level on a scale of 1 to 10 that we're going to meet our target of 400-ish, just under 400 responses?
Oh, I'm very confident. Yeah, I think we will have a longer consultation period this time in comparison with the hate crime policy, and I think that will allow us to reach more residents as well.
So 1 to 10?
10.
Wow. Loving that confidence. And just as a follow-up, once the consultation period's finished, how are we going to communicate with our residents and our tenants to ensure that going forward we do capture all ASB cases, but reporting of other cases which would not qualify as ASB are sympathetically managed but potentially, I guess, minimised through that channel?
So anything that's deemed to be neighbour nuisance will be managed by our tenancy team. And we work really closely with them in relation to that. Anything that residents can report anything to us, and we will provide them with that advice, and we log that information that we've given and that case as well.
So is it triaged in that manner then? The inquiry comes in and it's established whether it's ASB or not, and then it goes through the appropriate group?
Yes, that's correct.
Great, thank you. Any further questions from the members on that? Item number 7, ASB. No. Okay. So item number 8 then, so this is the repairs service transition progress report, verbal update as we've discussed. And I think, Deborah, you're taking that one, aren't you? Thank you.
Thank you. So as members will be aware, we are currently in contract with Morgan Sindall, and we gave notice on that contract last year, and that was a 10-year contract. We've been working with an organisation called Echelon, who are a consultancy who initially supported us in setting up the contract with Morgan Sindall. And they've been in place to help us demobilise the contract. We have also today commissioned Echelon to support us in our work to develop a new vehicle to bring our repair service in-house. This work has begun and contains 17 work streams, and to give you a couple of examples of those work streams, TUPE, so bringing the workforce in-house, procurement of high-risk works, so gas, electric, asbestos, fire, damp and mould, vehicle leasing, uniforms and materials. We're in the early stages of working through this transition, and we're working towards ensuring we can provide a good quality service for our tenants following the end of the contract, which is at the end of June this year. And I'm happy to answer any questions you may have about the process we're undertaking at the moment.
Any questions? Councillor Hadley.
The contract with Morgan Sindall would have come to an end in June this year, is that what you're saying?
Yes, 30th of June.
No, it was a 10 plus 5 contract, and we've decided not to extend the 5 years.
Councillor Webb, any questions on that?
I suppose my concerns are really around the transition, whether there is enough time for this integration to take place, really, and what are the foreseen problems that may come from that, in delivery.
So of course time is extremely short, and there are some significant risks around that time frame, and officers are working around that at the moment, and will be taking a paper to cabinet to get some decisions. The significant risks are that if we haven't got a viable repair service at the end of June, the regulator of social housing could take a number of steps. Firstly, they could bring in a management team and take over the management of the repair service in Basildon. They could also issue us with unlimited fines, and if they think we are not capable, they could take away our housing stock. So those are a number of significant risks which officers are discussing with the Chief Exec, Mr Jones, at the moment.
Thank you for the explanation, although it's not very reassuring when you outline the risks like that. Yeah, the time does seem to be very, very strict, and I know we have got a very good team. This is the thing, we've got exemplary officers working on this, but the best will in the world, there's only so much you can do in a certain amount of time to obviously try to keep things on an even keel. So what is the state of play at the moment? How are things moving with this plan at the moment?
So the team at Echelon have been preparing for us to press the go button for a number of weeks. So they have put they've got a plan in place in terms of resources to help us support us in the transmission. The transition. We've also looked at a piece of at a platform today. We're looking at several platforms this week, but the one we've looked at today, which I won't mention its name at the moment, does give us the ability to use local SMEs as well as the operatives which we TUPE over from Morgan Sindall. So in effect that could be a fail-safe for us, because should we not manage to TUPE all the operatives over, or some leave, that would give us the opportunity still to carry out those repairs, and also in doing that use local, as I said, SMEs, which I'm aware the administration would like us to do. In that meeting we had today, the provider of the platform produced a project plan and to identify the the project timelines, and those project timelines fitted in with our project timelines. And as I also mentioned, we are looking at 2 with a view that we're going to make a decision on that by the end of the week. So we are working at pace.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Headley. Sorry, if you finished, Councillor Webb. Yeah, Councillor Headley.
Thank you. If I understood that, the ambition of the administration was to bring, to exit the Morgan Sindall contract and bring the repairs service in-house. From what you've just said, it seems that they will augment the in-house maintenance regime, potentially with the use of small and medium enterprises that are private contractors. So that doesn't sound like it will be in-house. You'd have, and would they be subject to competitive tender?
So as a service, there are always subcontractors which are used. So Morgan Sindall will be using subcontractors as well as their own in-house teams, and that's the sensible way to organise a repairs contract because of the peaks and troughs. Yes, we will bring the Morgan Sindall teams over. Of course, it's their choice whether they want to come over, and some of them won't. But what the platform does, it then does allow us, as I said, to use these small SMEs in terms of tendering. The SMEs would sit in a framework, and so they would be managed within that framework, so we wouldn't have to go out to tender. The framework provider would also check their credentials and their qualifications and accreditations, which of course are really important in terms of us making sure we're compliant with the services we're putting in place for our tenants. I'm not sure if that answers your question fully.
No, I'm not trying to be awkward, but the framework is, I understand what a framework is, but are you saying that in-house we will manage those contracts? Because at the moment, if Morgan Sindall uses a subcontractor, it's down to Morgan Sindall to manage that, to work out the costs. Is that coming in-house, and are we managing the SMEs?
So we will manage the contracts which are carrying out our high-risk works, gas, electric, asbestos, etc. So we'll manage those. So we'll have a team of contract managers in-house who are going to manage those. In terms of the opportunity, in terms of opportunities for SMEs, what we would like to do is we'd like to procure a platform where we can have our own operatives, and we can have an open marketplace which contains SMEs. So they're all, that if you like, the SMEs are managed within the framework, and the internal operatives will sit on the platform but will be managed by us internally.
I think it's me not understanding how a framework manages the SMEs. Ultimately, somebody here will have to manage those SME contracts.
So the SME contracts are managed through the platform. It's a platform.
Who manages the platform?
So it's a platform provider. I'm not sure if I'm allowed, because we haven't appointed them, and we're looking at several others. So I'm not sure if I'm allowed to.
So
say
there's
that.
a platform provider.
Yes.
In addition to the in-house management.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. Sorry, have you finished your line of questioning, Councillor Headley? Yeah.
As I've understood, as the Director's just explained it, the framework is managed by an outside provider which we, for legal reasons, probably can't identify at the moment. So you're going into a contract with an external provider who will manage the potential use of SMEs. Fine.
Okay. I mean, from my side, I would kind of echo what Councillor Webb said, really, which is obviously time is extremely pressing, isn't it, here, particularly given that we've got some major work to be doing, bringing the workforce in-house, although I understand that we've got a mechanism to kind of supplement members of the team who may not come over, and also the critical works. So I'm going to ask the obvious question now, Deborah. What's your confidence level on a scale of 1 to 10? This is actually going to happen? have we got a contingency plan? And what's the point we activate the contingency plan?
So I've had some detailed discussions with Echelon about the option to get an emergency contractor in. However, they've said that that would not be possible because it would be highly unlikely that any contractor would come and provide it on a emergency basis. I think my confidence level is reasonably high. I think it's fair to say.
We're going to get a number out of you. Just I used to work in market research, and quantitative data is everything, Deborah. So I need a metric, I'm afraid.
I mean, just from my point of view, we've certainly left it late. I think it's fair to say. We're already finding some issues. You know, Morganton won't be doing planned works now, which take them past June 30th. So we're having to scramble to find contractors to go out and do some stuff. So we are starting to feel the impact of this. I think it's fair to say our internal teams will have to grow quite significantly to really cover all eventualities. But I think it's worth reiterating that we're doing this to give ourselves more flexibility, to make sure we're always compliant in what we're doing. And you know, Morgan contract's been great, but it'll give us more control over destiny in many ways.
And it's going to work, is it? So your mic wasn't on when you said yes, John. Okay. I mean, I'm not sure how we feedback, other than obviously what we've said, I'm not sure how we feedback to Cabinet on this, but I am hearing significant concerns and some plans, but not necessarily completely. Well, plans that it doesn't feel, I mean, from reading your faces, you're not entirely happy with. Sorry, I know I should be reading your face, that's a qualitative feedback. But, yeah, I'm not sure how we can feedback. Councillor Hadley.
I think it might be helpful if officers could provide a diagram of the sort of hierarchy of, you mentioned Echelon, they're in there somewhere. There's this contractor or this company you can't currently name because that's in, then you're going to have a management team here. I think it would be nice to have some form of simple diagram giving the structure and the levels at which they're going to be operating. And I didn't hear that this was going to be a competitive tender for some of this work. So if there's going to be some sort of pricing structure, which I think was built into the Morgan Sindel contract.
I think to explain it, I need to probably provide something a little bit more detailed, because it's really difficult for me to explain. I need to probably put it in maybe a briefing document, if that's helpful for members.
That's what I was asking.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, ideally we would be discussing a briefing document now, to be fair, and obviously we're not for reasons that we understand. You know, one of which is we don't want to take people off the work to produce this document on how the work's going. But as Councillor Headley said, that's the only way we can really assess this. And my worry is, when are we going to have an opportunity that's actually going to make a meaningful difference to assess that situation? Because we don't have a date for the next meeting. As it stands, we've got PERDA coming at us. Yeah. So that wasn't really a question, but yeah.
Yes, we'll produce a briefing document this week, John.
Well, I mean, the briefing document it really is of maximum use if the committee gets the chance to come back and look at it again, Deborah. So I don't know if that's possible. I do feel caught between not wanting to put pressure on a system that's obviously already under a lot of pressure, but on the other hand, it does make it extremely difficult for us to scrutinise without actually having something, a timing plan and associated risks laid out that we can actually review.
The deadline for the cabinet paper, I believe, is Friday. So if Chair, you were wanted us to meet again, I think that would be for you to decide, and we could then present that report.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure that's possible, is it, Suzanne?
Need to have another meeting before Friday, this Friday? No, I don't think so.
Okay. Well, look, I mean, I think, you've heard expressed from all three of us our concerns about this. I think at this point, that's kind of all we can do is pass that on and ask you to represent that to Cabinet. I'm sure they're already aware of, how the progress is going, but, hopefully you've heard the significant concerns from us on how this, how tight the time frame is and how important it is. Well, you've outlined some of the implications yourself. Okay, any further comments on that before we move on, or any further thoughts on how we handle it from the members? No? That's the way.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, just to make one comment. I think as a committee we'll be looking in the future, perhaps with the expectation of the KPIs kind of falling in numbers, the way things seem to sit at the moment, and also falling customer satisfaction standards. I mean, that's the worst case scenario, I know, but that's something perhaps we need to be prepared for, the way things stand at the moment. But yes, a comprehensive briefing for the committee would help, I think, really, for us to understand a bit more fully and assimilate what's actually going forward in regard to this.
Have you got any thoughts on what form that would take and when we should see it, Councillor Webb?
Again, it's the time is the essence, isn't it? We could, have a working party set in place to monitor it, but I think that might be splitting hairs. No, I think, it's difficult really to from what we've heard, it's very difficult to ascertain really how we can take this forward at this juncture.
So can I ask then, what value would it add, difference would it make if we did set up a further meeting of the committee to review this specific item before PERDA, so I guess at one of those dates at the end of March? I mean, realistically, how effectively is that going to input into the process if we did that? So can I just answer that question first, please?
I think, if I'm honest, it would be limited, because I think because time is so pressing, and we've got a direction of travel that we're working towards. I think, to make any changes or alterations or considerations to that may well take us off course, and that would increase the risk of not hitting that end of June deadline.
Any thoughts on that, Councillor Webb? Oh, sorry, Councillor Hadley, you got a question.
From what I'm hearing, Chairman, I think it's pretty. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think Cabinet are going to take the decision at some pace to get this over the line in time. And if Cabinet's next week, there isn't going to be time for us to scrutinise it. I think what will happen is Cabinet will make the decision. Can I assume that at that Cabinet meeting they will be aware of Echelon's involvement and this unnamed platform provider, or whatever you called it, framework provider?
The report, I wouldn't have thought would contain the level of detail in terms of the platform, the platform we're going to be using, but it will contain detail. It will be asking for the recommendations on the direction of travel.
Okay, so I think that what I'm hearing is that Cabinet will necessarily take this decision next week. We're going to be almost into Purdah then. There could even be a change of administration. So you're in a situation where I think we're going to have to let Cabinet do what they do. Officers will continue to try and secure this contract in good time so that there is continuity of service for the tenants.
Okay, thank you for that feedback. I mean, in that case, obviously, I don't think we don't want to disrupt what is already a very tight time frame, particularly if it's not going to have a significant impact, as Councillor Headley's outlined. So, I guess we are where we are on that one. Okay, thank you. So, next item on the agenda is the Housing Improvement Plan Quarterly Progress Update, which is pages 107 to 128 on the in the agenda. Or I think this is this the one where there's also a separate document, Louise. There's also a separate document that you can follow that on. So let me just read the matters for consideration for this item. So the Housing Scrutiny Committee is asked to note the development and ongoing implementation of the Housing Improvement Plan, which supports compliance with the Regulator of Social Housing's new consumer standards and prepares the Council for inspection. So, Louise, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. This is the usual report that comes to committee. It's the progress update on the Housing Improvement Plan. This report sets out the activity and the progress that's been made. The report within enclosure 1 is structured against the consumer standards and the outcomes that we're working towards. So, as you've just said, the committee is asked to just note the update. I'm happy to answer any questions, and colleagues from across the services here if there are any specific queries on their activity.
Any questions from the members? No. Okay. So I've got a few, if I may. So on the safety and quality standard, and I know that this is like an ongoing issue, but is there anything that we can do about persistent visit refusers, which we seem to have a small minority of? Because obviously there is a potential liability for the council in the implications of something happening that we're not aware of because we can't gain access to the property.
So I'm happy to take that question. If we're concerned about non-access due to compliance, we can go to court and get an injunction. It's quite an easy process.
Thank you. Okay. So can you just give us a refresher on the time frame for completing our tenancy review audit? So this is understand the tenancy standard section of the report. Thank you.
Thank you. The update at the moment for the tenancy audit is we're still progressing with getting them. As of today, we've got 21.8% of all the tenants of the tenancies at the moment. So for a population of over 10,000, you need about 1,000 responses for reliable early insights. So we've got more than double of that. So we're starting to look at that data to try and get some more early decision making. I haven't got a time scale at the moment when we're going to be completing it. Obviously we've got a new director starting. That's we're currently in discussions about that, how we're going to go forward to try and, so as I said before, they will be every 5 years, but the main aim at the moment is to try and get a tenancy audit off, you know, all of the tenancy if possible, 100%. So we need to fast pace that to get that, and then there'll be every 5 years after that. But as I say, we're still in discussion, so we could come back to you with a timescale. We haven't finalised that at the moment. Thank you.
Thanks, Kathy. So, has the regulator had sight of our line of travel, and are they broadly happy with where we are on that in terms of the pace?
We have provided the information of our tenancy audit of what we've done and how much we've collected at the moment. We're still waiting. We haven't got our feedback from the regulator at the moment. They've just been in, and it's still in the stages for us to provide further documents and gaps in all the areas if there's any. So we haven't got an indication, but they are certainly aware that we have started the tenancy audits, and they're aware of all the data that we're asking from those tenancy audits.
Thank you. So they've got that information, and they haven't as yet come back and say, no, sorry, that's not quick enough, or that's not comprehensive enough.
No, they haven't fed back to me at the moment, and we're still waiting. We've got a meeting with them tomorrow, and it's still we're still in the inspection, so we don't have the outcome at the moment. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Again, I think I asked this one last time, but is there any time frame on this idea of bespoke branding for our landlord operations? I think that's in the deck, isn't
it? We don't have a time frame for that at the moment. We did have a meeting last week with communications who have designed some branding ideas, and they've narrowed that down to what we call the top 3, and we'll be taking that to our Housing Improvement Board to get their feedback on it, and then we can start developing a new housing newsletter to start circulating as well. So we're hoping within the next few months for the first newsletter to go.
Great. Okay, so it's going for feedback. That's good to hear. Thank you. Okay, yeah, I didn't have any further questions on that. Any further questions on item 9 on the agenda? Guys, no. Okay, so item 10 then, housing performance report presentation. Again, I think this is a separate PowerPoint, and you, Louise, you're kind of leading on this with input, I think I'm right in saying.
I'm on the naughty list again this time, but as I say every time, we're never going to get 100% on a lot of these. Gas compliancy will always have some won't let us in, but as we've discussed, we do have a tenancy officer who helps get us access now. The 28-day target, again, we're not that close. I'd argue that the KPI was always very optimistic. And as our repairs get more difficult and they move away from being routine, I'd expect that 28-day target. And as we come towards the end of the contract, you might expect that to increase slightly. But apart from that, I mean, we are pretty close. And again, as I say every time, 100% is aspirational rather than necessarily achievable every month.
There are a couple of items there, the last 2 which come under my service. As I believe I mentioned last time, I believe it's somewhat inappropriate to have a target attached for the percentage of cases closed for which the homelessness main duty is accepted. The conditions for accepting a homelessness duty are quite firmly laid out in primary legislation, and if someone meets those criteria, we have no option but to accept the main duty or be considered to be acting unlawfully. So we carry out our duties accordingly. The percentage of cases for which homelessness was prevented, just underneath the target, but I would mention there that 61% does still place us above the national average in the most recently published figures, which was 51.9%. So even though we haven't met the target, we are still performing above the national average there.
Thank you. Any questions from the members on that data there? No, I'm not sure if I mentioned this before, but is it possible for us to have the numbers on here as well as the percentages, because it's difficult to see how significant the difference between 61% and 65% is if you don't know what the base, the number you're basing it off is.
Absolutely, Chair. Yes, we can get those figures added in there.
Thank you.
I mean, I don't know if you want me to go through each line or not. Happy to.
Well, I think we can take the report as read, so if you want to give us any headlines, anything that you think we should be particularly aware of, John, that would be fine.
That's fine. We'll keep an eye on that electrical inspection, compliancy, and we are doing a lot of thorough deep dives in our data at the moment as part of the regulator inspection, so we'll probably have a lot more to report in the next scrutiny. So I'll pass over.
Thank you. Our targets have consistently exceeded throughout this period. Actions including enforcement activity has risen significantly this financial year, which aligns with improved satisfaction levels across all areas. ASB enforcement outcomes have been proactively promoted through social media and local press coverage, and we hope that this approach strengthens community awareness and highlights our ongoing commitment to addressing antisocial behaviour. Publicising these actions also acts as a deterrent, encouraging compliance and helping to foster safer neighbourhoods.
Yeah, thank you. I would completely agree with that.
So in relation to the hate crime, we've created a standalone hate crime policy which has been separated from the ASB policy, and the consultation has just ended. The new policy provides clear guidance for staff. It's supported by training, streamlined processes and stronger accountability, and this will help teams to respond with greater confidence, consistency and sensitivity.
The only thing I'll mention about domestic abuse is just to reinforce what we have in the summary there, is that we're in a very fortunate position of having all of our domestic abuse officers are qualified IDVAs, which means they'll be able to provide a very high level of support to anybody coming through the service. And we also have specific specialisms there as well for helping older people, people who are subject to immigration control, and we also have someone now who specialises in younger people, and we also Basildon also chairs the MARAC meetings, which is a cross-boundary, cross-organisational meeting for victims who are at high risk.
Thank you.
Nothing really much to add on the allocations and lettings, except just to say that everything we do is geared around creating as much churn within the stock as possible, so that we can make as much use of each and every void that comes up. So we will always try and plan it to make sure that someone else further along the housing pathway benefits from every void that comes along, so that we can achieve, well, our goal is to get around 3 or 4 lettings from every void that comes up, and we will continue with that.
Thank you.
Sorry. It's for me. So obviously the data shows we're doing well at sustaining the tenancies and keeping eviction numbers very low. So this shows the majority of tenants are being supported to maintain their homes, and enforcement is generally resolving issues before they escalate. The number of tenancy enforcement actions is relatively high each month, which shows the team is actively intervening early, addressing problems and preventing cases from deteriorating into eviction. And obviously, the small number of properties returned, sort of like right to buy stops, suggests that the tenancy misuse has been identified and tackled. But it's not widespread, the numbers are quite low. Stats indicate the service is managing the risk quite well at the moment, supporting our tenants. Thank you.
Thank you.
Again, not really much to say around mutual exchange, other than to say that it's a great vehicle for tenants to have their own agency in resolving their housing needs, and we fully support them throughout that process. Can be very lengthy and complex, typically with 3 or even more households within the chain, but it's something that the team work very hard on achieving for the residents.
Thank you.
With the transparency and influence, this one's quite activity focused rather than measure focused. Kathy's already covered the tenancy audit, but just to highlight the TSMs that we're obviously in the middle of carrying out, and they close on the 31st of March 2026. So the report says, when we wrote this report, it was 450 completed surveys. We're now up to 872. So we've had a bit of a promotional drive over the last month to get those numbers up. We've obviously got a minimum that we need to meet, so we're well on track to exceed that. And then overfill homelessness.
Just a couple of key points to pick out there. Over the course of the last 12 months, we have continued to reduce the number of households placed in bed and breakfast accommodation in favour of nightly lets and our own stock accommodation. The benefits there being that nightly let and our own stock is obviously much higher quality than bed and breakfast accommodation, and is typically in borough as well, so it minimises the disruption for households in being placed out of borough. The number of households in temporary accommodation continues to increase, but that's a reflection of national challenges really in the scarcity of available and suitable accommodation across all tenure types, something that the government's recently released national plan to end homelessness recognises, with a number of initiatives that they're looking to put in place over the course of the next couple of years to try and tackle those housing challenges.
Yeah, that's encouraging, isn't it? That the number of people in unsuitable accommodations being minimised. Thank you for that. Okay, any questions from the members on any of that information? No? Thank you very much.
One comment.
One comment. Councillor Webb.
Thank you, Chair. On the gas compliance figures, it's very, very difficult, isn't it? I mean, the whole line seems to be very similar figures throughout, isn't it? So it seems to suggest it's the same households that you're having difficulty entering. It goes back to what Councillor Baker was saying earlier, really. What additional measures can be taken, really, to get those figures up? Otherwise, it's going to stay on that almost like flat level around 98%.
Agreed. We just have to expedite. We have to keep trying because it's very, very important. And I think once we bring the gas, we'll have a different way of doing this post Morgan Tyndall. So we just need to be absolutely sure we keep it at least at where we are, because if we don't, then the results could be quite catastrophic. So it's very important.
Add something, Deborah. Yeah.
Thank you. And just to add, we have recruited a new compliance officer who will be sitting in Kathy's team. So we'll shortly be reviewing our processes and looking at our legal remedies, which we must absolutely use for the safety of our tenants and other tenants around.
Yeah, I mean, at the risk of stating the obvious, I think if we have got a relatively straightforward mechanism available to us in something as, someone used the word catastrophic, didn't they? I think it's probably an appropriate word, unfortunately, in this situation. Questions could be asked, why didn't we use that tool? So good, that's reassuring to hear. Okay, so I think we've just got the work programme remaining to review. So obviously, I guess members have seen that, and we can take that as read. Other than we did discuss, I think earlier on, didn't we, some potential additional items on that. Obviously, we talked about more information on HRA, and also, personally, I'd like to see more information at an appropriate point on our housing stock profile to supplement what we've already seen here today. Suzanne, so if you could add those items in. Anything else that members would like to see added in to the work programme? Councillor Webb.
Yes, thanks, Chair. No, just something additional really to the Housing Annual Ombudsman Complaints Report. It might be an idea to have some supplementary information before that meeting in regard to the new guidance coming in from April this year on the compensation paid to residents, just as an information thing that might help, you know, in the deliberations.
That is on the work programme, resident compensation payments, new ombudsman guidance. It's just, we're just obviously got to wait for the guidance to be received. That is on there though.
Oh, so yes. No, beg your pardon. Sorry. Yeah.
And we also mentioned earlier the timing on the rent convergence. Is there a view for when that would most appropriately be timetable?
Is that different to that one?
So I think we need to discuss it with finance, because we need to time it in terms of when the budget setting goes to cabinet and full council, and then work our way backwards to set an appropriate date for overview and scrutiny, and then also the work before that we need to do with residents. So can we come back to you on that, if that's okay?
Yes, if you documented that, Suzanne, I'm happy to leave that as a TBD, if that's okay. Yeah. Okay, I think that's us done. Everybody, thank you very much for your participation tonight, and obviously wish you a safe journey home. Thank you.